A recent video of mine caused a lot of debate on my channel because I was talking about wildlife, crazy, wild, dangerous animals in America. I have decided to do a follow-up, and that's what's coming right up after this. Can you hear that? If I just stop talking for a second, listen to this noise. That's insane. I think they're like frogs, and there's actually thousands of stink bugs all around me right now. There was a big ass scary green thing over there. I don't even know what it was. It looked like a leaf. Earlier on we saw praying mantis, for goodness sake. I've only seen a praying mantis in the zoo. Now I saw one in real life. That is unbelievable. So yeah, it's pretty wild. If I leave my drink there, probably some animal is going to get it. And then that soundtrack. Hello everybody, how are you doing? Welcome to my channel. My name is Shaun and I'm a YouTuber from Edinburgh in Scotland. And here in today's episode I'm talking about the crazy wild animals you guys have in North America. And I will be comparing them to the most crazy dangerous wild animals we have in Scotland. Just to give a bit of context, because I received a lot of comments from people on my channel following my last previous video on this. People telling me about even more crazy dangerous wild animals that you guys have in different states that I didn't even consider putting on the list. And then I had a lot of comments from people who wanted to know more about Scottish dangerous wild animals, because I think there was a probably misconception that we have them too, when we usually mostly don't, but I'll be listing them anyway in today's episode. So welcome here everyone, thank you very much for joining in. If you're new to my channel, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button down below, join the gang, and then we are all set and you'll not miss anything from now on. And you want to hang around to the end of today's video because I am doing a Q&A, question and answer, ask anything, and it's specific to my Patreon members. I asked my Patreon members to ask me any questions they might have about Scottish wildlife or anything else, and I'm going to be answering each and every single one of them. If you don't know, Patreon is a platform where my audience can contribute to the running costs of my channel, and in return they get lots of exclusive benefits like behind the scenes videos, blooper reels, and much, much more. I had dozens of comments from people saying, why did you put this animal on the list but not that one? There are much more dangerous animals. Well, listen, here we go today again. I'm going to be looking at some of the other ones you guys listed for me in today's episode, and also talking about some of the dangerous wild animals we've got in Scotland. Because we do have a couple, actually, to be honest with you. I think top of the list of animals that I left off my list, my previous one, which people commented on my video, was the moose. Now, I don't know much about mooses. Is it one moose? Is it two mooses? Is it two mice? Or is it just moose for everything? I don't know. Moose, anyway, are apparently very dangerous. Now, I don't know anything about moose, really, except for the fact they are extremely big animals, much bigger than unusual deer, which you guys have in America, which I listed kills more people in America than any other animal, which we also have in Scotland. These stag deers can get quite rowdy, but the reason they're dangerous in Scotland and in America is because they jump in front of cars. Moose, however, apparently a very different kettle of fish, so to speak. Moose result in more casualties in North America than bears. If you got charged down by a moose and it got you with those big flappy antler things, I don't know what they are, you know, the outcome's not going to be good because of the size of these damn things. Another animal that I left off my list, despite talking about coyotes, an animal, very similar animal that I left off my list was wolves. And the reason I left them off because I wasn't totally sure of their range. I didn't know where they extended. I thought they would have been pushed way back up to the very far northern territories. But it makes sense. If you get wolves in Canada, you're obviously going to get wolves in Alaska and maybe some of the other northern states as well. I don't know. But wolves are certainly a dangerous animal. I know that. And a lot of people ask me about wolves in Scotland, right? Don't you guys get wolves in Scotland? Apparently everybody seems to think we get wolves in Scotland, which I'm really surprised about. Tell you what, it's a good question because we actually have had wolves in Scotland in the past, but it was a very long time ago. The last wolf officially killed in Scotland was in fact in 1680, a very long time ago. So we did have wolves before then, but for anyone in the kind of modern day Scotland, like, a wolf is just not part of our reality. I've seen them in the zoo and that is it, but obviously because of all like nursery rhymes and all that, we know that wolves are dangerous animals, pack hunters, and you wouldn't want to be on your own when a pack of wolves is after you. I think the outcome would be very bad unless you had a lot of ammunition. I think wolves would obviously be dangerous, but even then, a wolf on its own is basically like a big husky, right? Anyway, wolves, a dangerous animal that of course you get in Northern America, Alaska, right? So I did leave that off the list, but I probably should have put it on. So another interesting thing about comparing the wolves with North America and Scotland is the fact that we used to have them apparently, but this is not something most people know about. However, there are a number of people in Scotland, in the Highlands, who believe wolves should be reintroduced to Scotland because they are actually a native animal. They should be there. And because they're not there, there are no apex predators that would take out prey like deer, for example. And so deer numbers soared. And a lot of big estate owners in the Highlands would love to see wolves reintroduced, which is something that a lot of people in Scotland kind of would fear, I would imagine. I'm not really necessarily for or against the idea. Maybe if they were in really, really isolated communities in certain areas where they could kind of roam and hunt without people know where they are, so they wouldn't really necessarily come into contact. But it's an interesting concept, and I'd like to know what you guys think about that. Wolves haven't been in Scotland for, 300-400 years, but should they be introduced? That is the thinking at the moment. There are people talking about that. Next on the list, right? And this one is interesting because I actually knew about it. If you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you will know I was in New Orleans last year, and we went out to the bayou, to the swamp, to meet alligators, which obviously made my list as one of the most dangerous animals. And in that episode, you might have seen this section.
Oh, that's big. Look at the teeth.
Okay, now do you see who runs the show out here? I've seen Big Mama grab a 5-foot alligator back here. These hogs are omnivores. They'll eat anything you put in front of them. They will eat a human body before an alligator will.
That was a tour guide telling us about the wild boar, which are basically big pigs that are in that area. And they are extremely dangerous animals. Most people don't know this, but that tusk would go through you. They would also bite you something awful, and they could even eat a human. They would eat anything if they were hungry. Like the guide said, they are more dangerous than an alligator is. And it's another one, interestingly, that was native to Scotland at one point and got hunted out many hundreds of years ago. And in fact, they became extinct in the whole of the UK around the 13th century. So a very, very long time back, even before wolves. And interestingly, the hogs, the wild boar that you have in Northern America are not native to Northern America. They actually came from Europe. So transferred from here to there, became extinct here, and are now very highly populated in some states. Another animal people said I should be adding to my North American list are wolverines. I don't know anything about wolverines, but I've had a little look, and apparently there are only ever 4 documented cases of wolverines attacking humans. But, on the face of it, they could be potentially quite dangerous, about the size of a small dog, but on steroids, something in between a dog and a bear. But the fact that their claws and teeth are so sharp, they could potentially be dangerous. But a few people did mention wolverines, and I find that interesting in the fact that they're not actually that dangerous, really. I don't know if they have a reputation as such, but certainly not one that is in the record books as being that dangerous, but an interesting predator nonetheless. That's one thing about the United States that I find very fascinating, is you've got so many predators. Now here's a weird one, a bit of a zoo creature. Snapping turtles or alligator snapping turtles. I think they're 2 different things, but they're not necessarily out there to hunt humans. They are predators. They eat ducks and geese and stuff like that, but whether they would attack a human deliberately would be a bit questionable. I mean, they could accidentally come in your way, like if you were swimming in a lake and you came by one, it would grab you, and you do not want to be grabbed by one, because look at what it can do to a watermelon. That is just absolutely shocking. Like, their jaw strength is humongous, and must be not an animal you really want to tangle with. They're absolutely prehistoric and can do a lot of damage. That thing could go right through your bones, certainly take a finger off. And yeah, I think I'll be very careful if I'm ever swimming through a swamp in the southern states. Definitely. Another one we didn't mention last week, another big cat. We talked about cougars, but another one is the bobcat. I don't think bobcats, another one I've seen in the zoo, I don't think bobcats are necessarily massively dangerous, but it could take a pet quite easily, I would say. Dogs and cats, they are a big cat, essentially, and they're absolutely beautiful, beautiful animals. Look at them, they're just absolutely gorgeous. Now, this is one we can also relate to Scotland, because we had a very similar big cat that used to exist in Scotland many hundreds of years ago, again, that went extinct. We used to have lynx. Bobcat and a lynx, I'm not sure exactly what the difference is, but they're not too far apart. It is very sad that we don't have these predators in Scotland anymore, right? And I would love to see, they would be pretty harmless to a human, because they're just not big enough. I mean, I wouldn't like to tumble with one. I wouldn't like to get in a fight with one. I think it would hurt quite a lot. I think it would tear you up, right? But whether one could actually hunt you and eat you, I think was probably unlikely. Last but definitely not least, and something that you guys in North America are just about to become used to as a potential reality in the future, and that is the murder hornet, or the Asian hornet, the killer hornet. Now, I've seen documentaries of these things. They are absolutely, enormous things, and the sting from them can be deadly. And there's a lot of fuss right now in America about these things having landed on your shores and the damage that they could do. Coyote Peterson, a nature wildlife YouTuber that I follow, he went out and deliberately got stung by one, and the pain was really, really bad. I mean, he didn't die, but his arm certainly swole up, and you do not want to be stung by these things. And obviously, as it's an invasive species, it's one that you don't necessarily want on your shores. Who knows how they're going to interact with the local wildlife, if they're going to disrupt the pollinators like bees. Could be something that's not very good for North America, and they've started to find them, unfortunately, in Washington State, which is something that I'm quite fascinated by and really want to know about that story and how it develops. A lot of people have been mentioning this on newswires and all that kind of stuff recently, and it's obviously something that a lot of people are thinking about now. What are these things? How did they get here, and what are they going to do? These murder hornets, supposedly, they live in Asia, in Japan, very prevalent in Japan, right? How they got over the Pacific into the northwest of America is anyone's guess, but there is a potential they could just spread right across Northern America from there, which would not be a good thing. So that is a list of American dangerous, crazy, wild animals. Now, let's discuss briefly Scottish wild, crazy, dangerous animals, because we do have a few. Although I mentioned already in this video that a number of our apex predators no longer exist, we do have a few animals you might want to pay attention to if you're out for a bit of a wander in the woods in Scotland. Because I know a lot of you guys want to come over to visit Scotland, and that's great. Number one, and actually this would probably be the most dangerous animal we have in Scotland in terms of something that could attack you, right? And that is an adder. We have a snake called an adder, and if they bit you, it would be extremely painful. Now, you could die if you took a bad reaction to the adder bite, but you will certainly experience a lot of pain, and you would definitely need anti-venom treatment at hospital. Very unlikely that you would die from it, although small animals like your pet dogs and cats, if they got bit by an adder, it would be a different story, much more dangerous for them, right? But we do have a poisonous snake. I think it's the only poisonous snake that we have in Britain is the adder. I've actually seen one, so it's not totally true that we don't have, snakes in our land. Very, very difficult to see and find adders because of where they live in very remote places, and they dislike people basically, so difficult to see them. But we do have snakes that are poisonous that could do you harm, and they're called adders. Another animal, and we mentioned this in the last video and I've talked about it briefly today, is deer. We have lots of different species of deers in Scotland. The stag deer, which are the breeding males with the big antlers, are probably the most dangerous purely because of their size, and when they're all fired up with testosterone, when they're all fired up, they could actually attack you. And there are cases of people who have been very badly injured because of that. But the most common reason why you're more likely to be injured by a deer than any other animal in Scotland is because, and I know this through driving through the Highlands, they are stupid animals. They will jump out in front of you when you least expect it. And if you hit a big one and you're going, 60 mile an hour or even slower, you'll do extremely big damage to your car, and it could be fatal, right? Deer are a bit of a nuisance. We have too many deer actually in Scotland, and landowners are constantly monitoring numbers to bring them down. Because we have no apex predators, we have a deer problem. You might be interested in this t-shirt, what you're looking at, with a bit of Scottish humour there. Put a link down below if you'd be interested in checking that out. This one I think needs to be mentioned, and I think you guys might find it fascinating. We have Scottish Wildcats. The thing about our Scottish Wildcats is they are not necessarily much bigger than a domestic cat, but they're wild and they are beautiful, and you know what? I've seen them in the zoo before. I would love to see them in the wild, but the numbers of wildcats in Scotland is diminishing to such a rate that they're almost extinct. There are a few strongholds, very, very difficult to see them in the wild, but they do exist, right? There is actually a great documentary in Netflix, right, called The Scottish Tiger, or Scottish Tigers. I would very much recommend you guys check that documentary out to learn more about Scottish wildcats. Beautiful animal that, it is a predator in Scotland. I mean, it wouldn't take anything bigger than a rabbit, but nonetheless, it is probably one of our top predators and something that hopefully we can protect from going extinct, but it's looking unlikely, mostly because they breed with domestic cats. Once that happens throughout the population, the purebred wild Scottish cat will no longer exist. We have foxes in Scotland, a lot of foxes, and in fact we have foxes throughout the UK, even in big cities. I remember I was filming a video after, 2 in the morning in Edinburgh city centre on the Royal Mile. You could not get more city centre in Edinburgh than the Royal Mile. That's the main street that goes up to the castle, middle of the city. I can't remember what video I was filming, but a fox came right by me as if I wasn't even there. They're about the size of a small dog. Foxes in the UK have become very urbanised because there's more food for them in the city, and, very common sight in the UK are foxes. Now, they would never ever attack an adult, ever, right? Even a cat they would struggle to target, a domestic cat, because cats would usually come off best unless the cat is old or sick. But there was a case a couple of years ago in London where a fox jumped through someone's open window and attacked their baby that was sleeping, right? So a potentially wild animal, carnivore, it's like a small dog, and, if it has an opportunity to get food, easily it will, but not any more dangerous to any human other than maybe very, very small children. Last but not least, this is something that was on the list of people saying, what about this? Haggis, wild haggis. Probably an oversight from me, but yes, thinking about it, haggis are extremely dangerous animals that you don't want to come across. Something like a cross between a badger, a skunk, and a hedgehog. I've actually got one right here, look. This is my haggis mascot that somebody actually kindly sewed for me. But yeah, an animal that exists in the Scottish Highlands only, that are obviously very delicious to eat, but very, very deadly. And, well, this is something that I just made up, and it's not true whatsoever. But that's a long-running joke in Scotland. A lot of people will try and fool you and play you along that haggis are actually wild animals that we have in Scotland because we eat them. It's a famous thing, a famous dish that we eat in Scotland. A lot of Scottish people will try and fool you and try and make a joke that they're a real animal, when of course we all know that they're not. But anyway, if you've ever fallen for that, or if you believed me when I said about haggis being a wild animal that lives in the Highlands, let me know down in the comments. I'd be interested to know if you had any idea or notion that that was an animal or not. Now, like I said at the start of today's video, I was going to do a Q&A from my Patreon members, questions that my Patreon members sent in to me that I'm going to answer right now on the episode about wildlife in Scotland and other things as well. I am hugely, eternally grateful for all the people who have signed up as members to my Patreon account. All the money raised through that helped me to produce these videos and will help me to make great content in future as soon as this lockdown is all over and we can get back to going out in the big bad world, and I certainly can't wait to go out and do some more filming. So thank you to my Patreon members, and I would very much appreciate if you would consider joining up as well. Like I said, the link is down below. So, here are the questions from my Patreon members. The first question is from Mandy. In the summer, do the Highland cows shed, or do they have to be clipped? Or do they keep their coat all year? As far as I'm aware, Highland cows keep their coat all year. I have never ever seen a Highland cow that has been anything less than fully woolly mammoth. Because of where Highland cows naturally live in very kind of hilly, cold, wet Scotland, they need thick fur to kind of repel the rain and the wind, so that's pretty much why they're furry animals all year round. That's how we call them in Scotland, by the way, Highland coo, not Highland cows. They're a very beautiful, prevalent species of cattle that we have in Scotland that are basically picture postcard Scottish Highland coos. Question from Andrew Toy, who says, looking to buy a flat in Edinburgh later this year, within 10 miles of EH1, where would be some good neighbourhoods to focus on or avoid? The thing about Edinburgh, I get this question quite a lot by the way, the thing about Edinburgh is that it's quite a small city, You could drive from literally the city centre to the suburbs where you're going to start seeing sheep farms within about 20 minutes if the traffic was eased. Some good neighbourhoods I really like. Leith is a great neighbourhood because it's so central and yet also on the coast. Leith is a great place if you're considering a city apartment. Morningside on the other side of town is a great neighbourhood as well, which is very close to the city centre. If you want to go further out to a place that is a little bit more kind of out there in nature, but also close enough to the city, places like Portobello or even Musselburgh. Or on the other side of the city, you might consider places like Cramond, which again is on the Firth of Forth, the river, on the beach. Great views, but very close to the city centre. And nowadays, Edinburgh is a very different place from when I grew up in the 90s when there most certainly was really kind of rough neighbourhoods. Nowadays, not so much. I mean, you could kind of struggle to find a place that would be really, really bad to live in. It's all around a really, really great place to live. And a small city, lots of green spaces, and, you're not going to struggle to find a place that's close to the city centre, reasonable price. I would always recommend anywhere close to the shore, right? We've got a big shoreline in Edinburgh. Anywhere close to that and you'll be good. Zen Galloway asks, and this is a nature question, and much like the story for today's video, of all the Scottish wildlife, air, land or water, which animal would you like to see the most that you haven't already. Yeah, I think I'm probably alluded to this in the video today, right? But like I said, the Scottish Wildcat is definitely an animal I would love to see. I would love to see a wild Scottish Wildcat. They are so rare. You know, I think their numbers are in the small hundreds now. Maybe they won't be around forever, and I would love to see them in the wild, and that would be very, very difficult to achieve. You know, I've actually got probably 5 or 10 different animals I could list that I would love to see in Scotland, including eagles, by the way, another one I should have added on today's list. But another one which I have never seen, unfortunately, that I would love to see, which is actually quite common in certain places in Scotland, is a red squirrel. Red squirrels are native squirrels to Scotland. Grey squirrels, which were introduced from Northern America, kind of pushed them out of their territory, and that has been a problem, and they became quite endangered at some point. But now they're making a comeback. I've still never seen one though. I'd still love to see a red squirrel in Scotland. Joy Steele asks, how did I and my wife meet? That is a very long story, but the short version is we were both in London at the same time. I was working here and she was here studying English. We had a mutual friend and we literally met up in London because I was going to show her around the city at that time. And then, you know, I showed her around the city and then we just got on really well. And there's a much longer version of that I will tell one day, but it would require a whole nother video. Stephanie Huckabee said, are there any predatory animals in Scotland? I think I've covered most of them in today's video. There are, you know, like I said, various different species of sharks, none of which would hurt a human really. You know, I think predatory is quite a difficult word to describe, you know, because almost all animals could be predatory. You know, I think I mentioned the eagles. We have got white-tailed sea eagles, which are pretty big, bird of prey. That's a predatory animal that we have. We've got golden eagles as well, another predatory big bird of prey. But really, like I said, we do not hold a candle to you in America. You've got so many more dangerous wild animals than we do. And as for how big are spiders, I mean, our spiders are pretty small. Although we would still make a big deal if we saw something big enough, you know, like that. That would be a big spider for us and would be a problem, and we would freak out about it. And, you know, we just don't have big, poisonous, dangerous spiders in the UK anywhere, which is a good thing, I think. Christine Stockman says, every year people try and take selfies close to deer. Does this happen in Scotland? Yes, most definitely. And I myself have done it as well. If you go up to Glencoe in the Highlands, for example, there are a lot of deer which are there because people feed them, and we basically, you can get very close. But there are certain hotels, for example, that encourage the deer there by feeding them, and you can literally get right up close to them. And those deer are not aggressive whatsoever. Laurie Freeze says about the Highland cows, why do we raise them? Is it for meat? Is it for fur? What is it? You know what? I have no idea. Because, like, if you go to the supermarket and buy beef, for example, you don't ever see, like, a tag of beef. You don't ever see a packet of beef that says Highland Coo beef. So I'm not really sure what we do with Highland Coos. Maybe they're just there, to be honest with you, to look pretty and get the tourists to come in and take photos. It could just be that. Laurie also asks if I like haggis. I love haggis. Haggis is a great Scottish meat, not an animal. We have it at certain times of year for traditional reasons, but we also eat it basically anytime you want. And it's so diverse, you could have it in anything. You can have it on pizza if you want. Speaking of haggis, Ellie Bodden says, have you ever personally seen a haggis in the wild? That is it. Like, just like going back to my video talking about haggis, you know, we in Scotland love to wind people up about that. Of course, they're not real animals. You know, haggis is meat made up with a number of different types of meat, mixed together with herbs and spices. You know the story. Not many people like to know what's in haggis, but it is delicious. Brian from Milwaukee says, have I ever been hunting? Is it a thing in Scotland? Do people go hunting? Yes, absolutely, people go hunting, mostly for deer in Scotland. You can go hunting for other stuff as well, like rabbits and whatever, but mostly deer hunting and pheasant shooting as well, which tends to be a very upper class, royalty, elite type of thing to do. They'll tend to own big estates and invite their friends from down south to do pheasant shoots and all that kind of stuff. It's not really a thing that most people do, hunting. It tends to be reserved for the very rich and wealthy, especially like kind of rich and wealthy friends of royalty and estate owners from London, to be honest with you, because it is so expensive to do it. It's very heavily licensed, but you can go hunting. I used to go fishing a lot when I was younger and growing up. In my teenage years, I spent a lot of time fishing, which is a type of hunting. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we do go hunting in Scotland. Lillian Puck says she has seen me a lot of times touching the side of planes before I get on them in my videos. Why do I do that? Is it good luck? Basically, good luck. I'm not the greatest flyer in the world. I love flying, but I'm also a bit nervous when I fly, so I always feel like, you know, there can't be any harm on, you know, giving the plane a bit of a pat on the shoulder as you get on, saying, you know, please do a good job. Maybe I'm a bit mad, but that's what I do. Good luck, I guess. Lynn Newell says, you'd like to hear some Scottish, maybe Glaswegian, which is obviously very different from Gaelic. The thing is, I can't, you know, just start speaking Scots. It's very difficult to do. It would be, I could only speak it if I was speaking to a friend who is also speaking Scots as well. But it's very, very difficult for me to just get into it like that, unfortunately. It's not something that I would do just unnaturally. If I was speaking to a friend for Scotland, then that's a different story. Don't speak a single word of Gaelic other than Slangeva, which is the same for 95-98% of Scottish people. Lynn would also like to know why I go to Texas so much. I've only ever been to Texas once before. Had a great time. I went to Dallas and Fort Worth. I would love to come back and see more, but I've only ever been to Texas once. Lynn also says I should come to Northern California if I want to see redwoods. I'd love to come to California. Absolutely, it's on the list. Lots of places in America I would love to go. Jamie Shaw says, what is your plan once the restrictions lift a bit? Would you be going back to Scotland? Yeah, so basically, I had plans to travel a lot this year. I wanted to come to America. I wanted to come to Canada. But all those things are basically on hold. I mean, there's still a chance I'll come to America this year, but they're going to be very last minute things. I'd absolutely love to do it, but that is the only kind of thought plan I have. But, you know, otherwise my plans for this year are basically just to get through this horrible lockdown period. And if we can manage that, great. I do actually plan to go back to Scotland. Scotland is my home and Scotland calls me. We just never know the future, and I certainly don't know anything about the future at this stage. We are in lockdown in London, and that is it until we get out of this. Until it's safe. Danica Painbooth says, Hi DJ from USA, New Mexico. My question is, do you have any questions about New Mexico? To be honest with you, I don't know anything about New Mexico at all, really. To be absolutely honest with you. Obviously, there's lots of states in America that I've never been or kind of know much about, and New Mexico is definitely one. Would I be right in thinking that is Albuquerque? The only reason I think that is because I was a big fan of Breaking Bad, the series. That's about all I know about New Mexico. I guess my reason would be, why is it called New Mexico? Is it because it's on the border of Mexico and there's something about that? I don't know. It's a very hot, dry desert, right? That's all things I know about New Mexico, but I actually would love to know more and I would love to visit. Absolutely. One day, that will happen. And that is all my Patreon member questions, and I would very much appreciate if you check it out. So thank you all for watching today's episode. Great to speak to you as always. And until the next one, have a good night, morning, evening, afternoon, or whatever time of day it is wherever you are in the world. Take care.